I stood in the shadows of the grand ballroom, my eyes fixed on the couple gliding gracefully across the dance floor. Serena, my wife of 10 blissful years, was wrapped in the arms of Victor Sorensen, her dashing boss at the marketing firm. Her emerald green gown shimmered under the chandeliers as he held her close, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They moved as one, their bodies perfectly in sync, eyes locked on each other with an intensity that made my stomach churn. Around them, Serena's colleagues and clients watched with knowing smiles and hushed whispers. I caught snippets of conversation, speculation that the chemistry between them was undeniable, that perhaps I should be worried. Worried? No, I was seething with humiliation and rage. This was the third year in a row that Serena had insisted we attend her company's lavish charity gala. And the third year that she had abandoned me to dance the night away with Victor. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to march onto the dance floor and rip her away from him. But I held back, retreating further into the shadows. Causing a scene would only give the gossip mongers more fodder. Instead, I would bide my time and determine my next move. As I watched Victor lean in to whisper something in my wife's ear, eliciting a radiant smile, my mind drifted to happier times. I remembered the early days of our marriage, when Serena looked at me the way she was gazing at him now. Back then, we were an unstoppable team, so in love that others envied our devotion. But over the past year, we had grown distant, like two ships slowly drifting apart. Late nights at the office, unexplained absences, a growing coldness in her eyes. I had chalked it up to stress, the pressure of her meteoric rise up the corporate ladder. Now I wondered if I had been blind to the obvious. The music ended and the dancers dispersed. Serena, flushed and glowing, made her way to the bar with Victor close behind. I followed at a distance, straining to hear their conversation over the din of the crowd. "You were magnificent out there," Victor murmured, his hand grazing her lower back. "I'm the envy of every man in this room." Serena laughed, a tinkling sound that once made my heart flutter. "You flatter me, Victor. But you know I'm a married woman." "For now," he replied with a wicked grin. "But we both know that's just a temporary obstacle." I froze, my blood running cold. Did I hear that right? Were they actually plotting to destroy our marriage? Dizzy with shock and fury, I stumbled back, colliding with a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes. The glasses shattered on the marble floor, drawing startled gasps from the crowd. Serena whirled around, her eyes widening as they met mine. For a moment, she looked stricken, guilt etched across her lovely face. But then Victor placed a hand on her arm and she quickly composed herself, her expression hardening into a mask of cool indifference. "Darling, are you all right?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "You look pale. Perhaps we should head home." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. The betrayal, the blatant lies, the casual cruelty of it all, it was too much to process. Shaking my head, I turned and pushed my way through the throng of curious onlookers, desperate to escape the suffocating ballroom. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, clearing the fog from my brain. I gulped deep breaths as I paced the sidewalk, my mind reeling. How could she do this to me, to our family? What about our daughter Lily, only 8 years old and utterly adoring of her mother? Did Serena even consider the devastation this would cause? Devastation. The word echoed in my head, taunting me. No, I would not let them destroy me, destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. If Serena wanted to throw away our life together, she would not do it on her terms. I would take control of the narrative, protect myself and Lily from the fallout. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number of an old friend from law school, now a high-powered divorce attorney. "Hey Matt, it's Nate," I said when he picked up, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "I need your help. My wife, she's having an affair with her boss. I want to file for divorce." There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. Then Matt let out a low whistle. "Damn, Nate. I'm so sorry. That's rough, man. Listen, come by my office first thing Monday morning and we'll get the ball rolling. I'll make sure you and Lily are protected." "Thanks, Matt," I managed, relief flooding through me. "I knew I could count on you." Ending the call, I squared my shoulders and turned to face the hotel, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside, Serena was probably searching for me, ready to spin more lies. But I was done being played for a fool. As I walked to my car, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would play the dutiful husband a little longer, gather evidence of Serena's betrayal. Then I would strike hard and fast, blindsiding her with divorce papers and a custody battle she wouldn't see coming. Victor Sorensen may have stolen my wife, but he would not steal my daughter or my dignity. I would make them pay for their treachery, no matter the cost. And when the dust settled, I would be the one left standing, ready to rebuild my shattered life into something stronger. I slid behind the wheel and pulled out onto the empty street. The war had begun, and I would not rest until I emerged victorious. The drive home was a blur, my mind consumed with visions of Serena and Victor locked in a passionate embrace. I barely registered the familiar streets and landmarks as I navigated on autopilot, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my heart was pounding and my palms were slick with sweat. I sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the facade of our beautiful colonial home. Just yesterday, it had been a symbol of our shared success, the embodiment of the American dream. Now it felt like a hollow mockery, a lie built on a foundation of deceit. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and made my way up the front walk. As I reached for the doorknob, I hesitated, struck by a sudden wave of dread. What if Serena was already inside, waiting to confront me about my abrupt departure from the gala? Was I ready to face her, to pretend that everything was fine while my world crumbled around me? Steeling myself, I pushed open the door and stepped into the foyer. The house was dark and silent, save for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room. I flicked on the lights and glanced around, half expecting Serena to materialize from the shadows. But she was nowhere to be seen. Her coat and purse were missing from their usual spot by the door, and her keys were gone from the dish on the console table. A quick check of the garage confirmed that her car was still gone. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a pang of anger. Of course, she wasn't home. She was probably out with Victor, celebrating their victory over the poor, clueless husband. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my footsteps heavy with exhaustion and despair. The room was exactly as I had left it that morning, the bed neatly made and Serena's vanity table arranged with her usual clutter of cosmetics and perfume bottles. But now everything looked different, tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. How had it come to this? What had I done to drive her into the arms of another man? I thought back over our years together, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. But all I could see was a montage of happy memories, our wedding day, the birth of our daughter, lazy Sunday mornings spent lounging in bed. Had it all been a lie? Or had Serena simply grown bored with our life, with me? The thought made my stomach twist with a mixture of sadness and rage. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in my own dark thoughts. But eventually, I heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of Serena's heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I rose to my feet, my heart hammering in my chest. This was it. The moment of truth. I made my way downstairs, each step feeling like a mile. Serena was in the kitchen, her back to me as she rummaged through the refrigerator. She was still wearing her gown from the gala, the green silk hugging her curves in a way that made my throat tighten. "You're home late," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Serena jumped, whirling around to face me. For a moment, she looked guilty, her eyes wide and her mouth slack. But then she composed herself, her lips curving into a practiced smile. "Nate, you startled me," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "I was just getting a drink. It was such a long night, and I'm parched." I watched as she filled a glass with water from the tap, her hands shaking slightly. She took a long sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "You left the gala early," she said, setting the glass down on the counter. "Is everything okay?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. Was everything okay? No, everything was most definitely not okay. But I couldn't let her see that, not yet. I wasn't feeling well, I lied, my voice steady. "Too much champagne, I think." Serena nodded, her expression sympathetic. I'm sorry, darling. I should have checked on you. I got caught up in conversation with some clients and lost track of time. Clients. Right. More like one particular client, one who couldn't keep his hands off my wife. I forced a smile, my jaw aching with the effort. It's fine. I know how important these events are for your career. Serena's shoulders relaxed, and she took a step towards me, her hand outstretched. You're so understanding, Nate. I don't know what I did to deserve you. I recoiled from her touch, unable to bear the thought of her hands on me, not after where they had been. Serena frowned, hurt flashing in her eyes. Nate, what's wrong? She asked, her voice trembling. Did I do something to upset you? Yes, I wanted to scream. Yes, you did something. You betrayed me, betrayed our family. You threw away everything we had for a cheap thrill with your boss. But I bit back the words, swallowing them like bitter poison. No, of course not, I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. I'm just tired. It's been a long day. Serena studied me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to gauge my mood, to determine how much I knew. Finally, she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Okay, let's go to bed, then. We can talk more in the morning. I followed her upstairs, my feet heavy with dread. As we climbed into bed, Serena reached for me, her hand sliding across my chest. I flinched away, mumbling something about not feeling well. Serena sighed, rolling onto her side to face away from me. Good night, Nate, she whispered, her voice small and sad. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling as Serena slept beside me. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, 1,000 doubts. How long had the affair been going on? Did anyone else know? What would happen to Lily if we divorced? As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, I finally drifted off into a fitful sleep, my dreams haunted by visions of Serena and Victor, their bodies entwined in a lover's embrace. The next morning, I awoke to an empty bed and a note on Serena's pillow. Went for a run, it read. Be back soon. I crumpled the note in my fist, anger surging through me. A run, my ass. More like a rendezvous with her lover. I showered and dressed quickly, my mind churning with plans. I needed evidence, proof of Serena's infidelity. I couldn't confront her without it, not if I wanted to come out on top in the divorce. I made my way downstairs, my stomach growling with hunger. As I entered the kitchen, I froze, my eyes widening in shock. There, sitting at the breakfast table, was Victor Sorensen, a smug grin on his face. And draped across his lap, wearing nothing but a silk robe, was my wife. Good morning, Nate, Victor drawled, his hand resting possessively on Serena's thigh. Care to join us for breakfast? I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding in my ears as I took in the sickening scene before me. Serena was nestled on Victor's lap, her robe hanging open to reveal a tantalizing glimpse of bare skin. She looked thoroughly debauched, her hair mussed and her lips swollen from his kisses. You bastard, I growled, my hands curling into fists at my sides. Get your filthy hands off my wife. Victor threw back his head and laughed, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. Your wife? I'm afraid you're mistaken, old man. Serena belongs to me now. He punctuated the statement by trailing his fingers along the curve of Serena's neck, making her shiver. She didn't pull away or protest. Instead, she gazed up at him with open adoration, like a lovesick teenager. White-hot rage lanced through me at the sight. This was my home, my life they were so carelessly violating. I wanted nothing more than to lunge across the room and pummel Victor's smug face into a bloody pulp. But I held myself in check, my jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might shatter. I needed to play this smart, gather evidence for the coming legal battle. Losing my temper now would only give them the upper hand. Get out, I bit out through gritted teeth. Both of you. Now. Victor arched one dark brow, his expression a mask of mock innocence. Why, Nate, is that any way to treat your guests? We were simply enjoying a cozy breakfast together. This is my house. I exploded, slamming my fist down on the counter hard enough to rattle the dishes. "You have no right to be here, especially not with her." I jabbed an accusing finger at Serena, who flinched as if I had struck her. For the first time since entering the kitchen, a flicker of guilt crossed her beautiful features. "Nate, please," she began, her voice trembling. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" I spat. "That you've been screwing your boss behind my back? That you've made a complete mockery of our marriage vows?" Serena opened her mouth, then closed it again, her eyes filling with tears. Victor, damn him, looked utterly unruffled, like a king surveying his kingdom. "There's no need for hysterics, Nate," he said in that same infuriatingly calm tone. "Serena and I are in love. Surely you can understand that. You're not a fool." His words were like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. In love? How could this be happening? Just yesterday, my life had been perfect, a dream. Now it was crumbling around me in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "Get out," I ground out again, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I want you both out of my house immediately." "And Serena?" I turned my gaze to my wife, my eyes boring into hers. "Don't even think about taking Lily. She's my daughter too, and I'll fight you every step of the way." A muscle ticked in Victor's jaw, the first crack in his unflappable facade. Clearly, the thought of being separated from Serena's child hadn't occurred to him. "Good. Let the bastard squirm." "You can't do that," Serena protested, her voice rising in panic. "Lily is my daughter. You can't take her from me." "Watch me," I snarled. "I'm not going to let you two ruin her life with your sordid little affair. Now get the hell out before I call the police." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Victor rose from his chair, dislodging Serena from his lap. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the robe closed over her body. "This isn't over," Victor said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're going to regret this, Nate. Mark my words." I didn't respond, didn't even look at him. I simply stood there, fists clenched, as he strode from the room, Serena trailing miserably behind him. Only when I heard the front door slam did I allow myself to exhale, my shoulders sagging with the release of tension. I sank into the nearest chair, my legs suddenly weak and rubbery. It was done. I had taken the first step, asserted my dominance over the situation. But as I sat there alone in the kitchen that had once been the heart of my happy home, I couldn't help but wonder at what cost my small victory had come. Serena was gone, swept up in the intoxicating spell of her new lover. And Lily, my sweet, innocent little girl, and how would I begin to explain this nightmare to her? How could I protect her from the fallout of her mother's actions? Resolve settled over me like a heavy cloak. No matter what it took, I would fight for my daughter's well-being. I would burn my life to the ground if I had to, salt the earth and rebuild from the ashes. Serena and Victor had declared war, and they had no idea what they were up against. I rose from the chair, my hands steady now, and strode to the hallway closet. From the back, I retrieved a battered metal lockbox, a remnant from my days in the military. Flipping open the lid, I surveyed the contents with grim satisfaction. Inside was everything I would need to wage this battle. A thick manila envelope stuffed with documents, a burner phone, and a snub-nosed .38 revolver, its barrel winking dully in the low light. Gathering up the box, I carried it to my home office and set it on the desk with a dull thud. Then I booted up my computer and began methodically documenting every interaction, every shred of evidence against Serena and her lover. By the time the sun set outside my windows, I had compiled a detailed record, phone logs, emails, banking statements, all pointing to the depths of Serena's deception. I even logged the events of that morning, typing out a meticulous description of walking in on them, of the shock and humiliation that still burned in my gut. As I worked, I could feel the ice creeping through my veins, quenching the raging fire of my emotions. This was war, and I would win it through sheer, cold determination. Finally, I leaned back in my chair and cracked my neck, rolling my shoulders to release the tension knotted there. One last thing to do before I could rest. I opened my phone and tapped out a number I had committed to memory long ago, one I never thought I would need to use again. It rang once, twice, before a gruff voice answered. Yeah? Mick, it's Nate Caldwell. I need your help. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Well, well. The prodigal son returns. What kind of trouble are you in this time, kid? I smiled grimly, appreciating the familiarity of Mick's gravelly tones. He had been my commanding officer in the Marines, had taught me everything I knew about strategy and warfare. The kind that requires some very particular skills, I said. How soon can you be in Chicago? Another pause, longer this time. Then, give me 48 hours. And Nate? Whoever you're going to war with, make sure you're ready to bury them when it's over. 48 hours later, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit booth at the back of a seedy bar on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with the stench of stale beer and cigarette smoke, and the jukebox in the corner blared a tinny rendition of some old country song. I drummed my fingers on the scarred tabletop, my eyes fixed on the door. Mick was late, and with each passing minute, the knot of anxiety in my gut tightened a little more. Just as I was about to give up and leave, the door swung open and a familiar figure strode in. Mick looked much the same as he had the last time I'd seen him, his broad shoulders straining against the fabric of his leather jacket, his salt and pepper hair cropped close to his skull. He spotted me immediately and made his way over, sliding into the booth opposite me with a grunt. You look like hell, kid, he said by way of greeting, signaling the bartender for a drink. I snorted, taking a sip of my own whiskey. Feel like it too. Thanks for coming, Mick. I know it was short notice. Mick waved a dismissive hand. Anything for one of my boys. Now, what's this all about? You were pretty vague on the phone. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's my wife. She's been cheating on me with her boss. I caught them together yesterday morning. Mick's bushy eyebrows shot up. Damn. That's rough, kid. I'm sorry. I shook my head, my jaw clenched. I don't want your sympathy, Mick. I want your help. I need to make them pay for what they've done. The bartender arrived with Mick's drink, and he took a long swallow before fixing me with a piercing stare. What exactly did you have in mind? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I want to destroy them. Both of them. I want to take everything they hold dear and grind it into dust. Mick was silent for a long moment, studying me over the rim of his glass. That's a dangerous road you're talking about walking, Nate. Once you start down that path, there's no going back. I know, I said, my voice hard. But they've left me no choice. They've taken my wife, my family. I won't let them take my daughter too. Mick sighed, rubbing a hand over his grizzled face. All right, I'll help you. But we do this my way, understand? No going off half-cocked, no stupid risks. We plan every move, and we execute with precision. I nodded, relief flooding through me. With Mick on my side, I finally felt like I had a fighting chance. Where do we start? I asked, leaning back in my seat. Mick drained his glass and set it down with a thunk. First things first. We need intel. Everything you can get your hands on, phone records, email, bank statements. We need to know their every move, their every weakness. I smiled grimly, reaching into my jacket pocket and pulling out a flash drive. Way ahead of you. I've been compiling evidence for the past 2 days. It's all here. Mick took the drive, turning it over in his fingers. Good man. This will give us a solid foundation to build on. He tucked the drive away and fixed me with a serious look. Now, about your daughter. Where is she now? With my sister, I replied. I sent her there as soon as I confronted Serena and Victor. I didn't want her caught in the crossfire. Mick nodded approvingly. Smart move. Keep her there for now. The less contact she has with your wife, the better. I felt a pang of guilt at the thought of keeping Lily from her mother, but I pushed it aside. This was for her own good, even if she couldn't understand that now. What about Serena? I asked, my voice rough. How do we handle her? Mick leaned back, steepling his fingers. Carefully. She's the linchpin in all this. If we can break her, Victor will crumble. Break her how? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Mick's smile was cold and predatory. By hitting her where it hurts the most. her reputation, her career, her standing in the community. We'll make her a pariah, a laughingstock. By the time we're done, she'll be lucky if she can get a job flipping burgers. I swallowed hard, a flicker of doubt creeping in. Did Serena really deserve such a brutal takedown? She was still the mother of my child, the woman I had loved for so long. But then I remembered the sight of her draped across Victor's lap, the casual cruelty of her betrayal, and my resolve hardened once more. "Do it," I said, my voice like flint. "Whatever it takes." Mick nodded, his eyes glinting with a feral light. "And Victor? What do you want to do about him?" I thought of the smug bastard's face, the way he had taunted me in my own home. The way he had put his filthy hands on my wife, on the mother of my child. "Destroy him," I growled. "Ruin his career, his reputation, his life. I want him to suffer like I have suffered." Mick's grin was savage. "With pleasure." Quote. Over the next few weeks, Mick and I put our plan into action. We started with Serena, digging deep into her past, her present, her every dirty little secret. It wasn't hard to find the cracks in her perfect facade, the unpaid parking tickets, the youthful indiscretions, the questionable business practices. We leaked the information slowly at first, a trickle that soon turned into a flood. Anonymous tips to her boss, her clients, her social circle. Whispers that grew louder with each passing day, until Serena's name was on everyone's lips, spoken with a mixture of pity and scorn. Her boss was the first to turn on her, calling her into his office for a performance review. I watched from a coffee shop across the street as she emerged hours later, her face blotchy with tears, a cardboard box of her belongings clutched to her chest. Next came her clients, the high-powered executives and wealthy socialites who had once clamored for her services. One by one, they dropped her, citing creative differences or shifting priorities. Serena's once thriving marketing firm crumbled, her employees scattering like rats from a sinking ship. But it was the final blow that broke her, the one I had been saving for last. An anonymous tip to the press about her affair with Victor, complete with lurid details and damning photographs. The story exploded across the front pages, Serena's face splashed across every tabloid and gossip site. Overnight, she became a pariah, a cautionary tale of the dangers of mixing business with pleasure. Her remaining clients fled, her social circle evaporated, and her once promising career lay in ruins. I watched it all unfold with a grim satisfaction, a sense of justice served. Serena had betrayed me, had shattered our family for her own selfish desires. Now she was reaping the consequences of her actions. Seeing her brought so low, so utterly destroyed, left a bitter taste in my mouth. I pushed those feelings aside, burying them deep. There was no room for sentiment in this war, no place for mercy or compassion. Serena had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. With Serena neutralized, Mick and I turned our attention to Victor. The man was a harder nut to crack, his defenses more formidable. But even the mightiest fortress has its weaknesses, and we were determined to find his. We started with his business, a sprawling real estate empire that stretched across 3 states. On the surface, it seemed unassailable, a gleaming tower of wealth and power. But as we dug deeper, we began to uncover the rot at its core. Shady deals, bribes to city officials, corners cut and regulations flouted. Victor's success, it seemed, was built on a foundation of corruption and greed. And we had the evidence to prove it. We leaked the information to the authorities, to the press, to anyone who would listen. At first, Victor tried to brush it off, to spin it as a smear campaign by his rivals. But as the evidence mounted, as the indictments began to pile up, even he could not escape the tide of public outrage. His investors fled, his properties were seized, and his once mighty empire crumbled to dust. In the end, he was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and the bitter taste of defeat. But even that was not enough for me. I wanted Victor to suffer as I had suffered, to feel the same soul-crushing pain and humiliation that he had inflicted on me. And so, with Mick's help, I set in motion the final phase of my plan. A whisper campaign, a series of rumors and innuendos that painted Victor as a monster, a predator who preyed on vulnerable women. We planted stories of harassment, of coercion, of abuse. We found women willing to come forward to share their tales of trauma at Victor's hands. Some were true, some were not. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Victor's reputation, already tarnished by his business dealings, was now utterly destroyed. He became a pariah, a social leper shunned by all who knew him. Even his own family turned their backs on him, disgusted by the man he had become. In the end, Victor was left with nothing. No wealth, no power, no one to turn to in his hour of need. He was a broken man, a shell of his former self. And I watched it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. I had won. I had taken everything from the man who had taken everything from me. Justice, at last, had been served. With a soft sigh, I closed the door to Lily's room and made my way down the hall to my own. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new beginning. And I would face it with my head held high, my heart open, and my soul ready for